Hey, everybody. This is Joshua Littrell with the Veterans for Cannabis podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in to part two of our Veterans for Cannabis podcast, where we're going to talk about Georgia's medical cannabis program and their industrial hemp program. We'll also touch on Florida's medical cannabis program and what their industrial hemp program may look like as well. I'm Joshua Littrell, your host. I'm a combat veteran of the United States Air Force. And today we're going to start with Georgia's HB 324, which is the bill that passed medical cannabis cultivation here in the state of Georgia. This bill was something we've been working on for the last 5 years. I want to back up and give you guys a little bit of history about how this bill came about and what it was really intended to do. Initially, Representative Peake, Alan Peake, was a state representative who was elected, and he saw little Haley. And little Haley had seizures. She had some issues that were hard for her to manage with medication, and her family had been struggling for years. And her family came across cannabis oil and saw the absolute wonders about what cannabis was, how it could help her alleviate the seizures that she was having, how it could improve her quality of life. And it really made a difference to Representative Peake, who was at that time a very conservative Republican representative who is still that way, who believes in God, country, and fighting for his fellow man and woman. And when Haley's family came to Representative Peake and told him the story, he opened up and started listening to what was cannabis, how effective it was, and what it was doing for their family, and also the struggles that the family had too. Those struggles were something that almost every one of us in our veteran community faces every single day. The struggle of not having access to quality medicine. They were having to buy, and I'm doing my air quotes again, guys, street weed. And that's a really frustrating thing for a parent and also for us as veterans, right? And for all of you listeners who are maybe in a state that doesn't have a medical cannabis program and you're having to get your cannabis from the street. You don't know what that quality is. You don't know where it came from, how it was grown. Was it grown organically? Did it have pesticides? Did it have heavy metals in that? What's really in that plant? Nobody knows. And the worst part about that is 3 out of 4 times you may get it and it smells great, it works great, and it's very effective, but that one time it didn't. Well, it smelled like Blue Dream. The person you bought it from said it was Blue Dream, but then it just was not effective like your other Blue Dream that you got 3 out of the 4 times before, right? So you're trying to figure out what in the world's going on. Well, they were struggling with the same exact thing, trying to get access to quality product, trying to get access to medicine that was really, really effective in alleviating their daughter's symptoms. And that was a huge issue. And they were able to find relief by going to Colorado. They became medical refugees, and they were, breaking federal law to get medicine out here. And this was way back in 2014. And thank goodness they were in Representative Peake's district, and he was an open door policy, and he's always been a really great elected official. And I've been so happy to be a part of what this movement's been here in Georgia, and I'll get into that in a little bit. But they were in his district. They went to Representative Peake and said, hey, here's what we've got. This is our problem. This cannabis oil is working, and it's helping. And he was able to see firsthand and experience what difference it made in Haley's life. And that changed everything for Representative Peake. And it's been really unfortunate in that process that, some of the representatives and senators that we've come in contact with, both at the state and federal level too, don't believe in cannabis being effective medicine. And it's really unfortunate because you and I know how effective it is. These families know how effective it is. But the representatives and senators who are elected to do our due and to vote the way that we say as their constituents don't vote the way that we want them to vote, which is, hey, you've got to vote for cannabis access across the country. We've got to make sure that families don't have to fight for quality tested product. They can trust what they're getting is what it's advertised as, one, and two, they need to find effective medicine. They need to have options that are different cannabinoid profiles, different terpene profiles, different potency levels, all of that good stuff. They've got to be able to experiment to find the right thing, just like you should. we don't advocate for finding, one strain and sticking with that one strain. What we want you to do is to go out and find what works best for you, but do some experimentation on that as well. Try to find different things because your body can build up a tolerance to it over time. You just need to re-fortify your endocannabinoid system in this process. So try to step outside your norms and try to find quality tested products that are different cannabinoids, different proteins, different, really potency levels on it and different terpenes. So we've got everything that's there in it. We got to really step outside the boundaries of what the norm is. So that's what this family, little Haley's family, was fighting with. Representative Peake saw it firsthand, and he was able to get behind it. And he championed something called HB1 back then. It was the Haley's Hope Act. That was the medical cannabis program in Georgia, what was born out of it in 2014. So the great state of Georgia, here where I am sitting at now, and I'm a lifelong resident of Georgia. My military service took me all over the world. I lived in Vermont for a few years and Florida and, all over the country and all over the world. And I've seen a lot of the great things and a lot of the negative things that come along with some of the different places that I've been to as well. But here in Georgia, we passed this bill in 2015 that was the medical cannabis program. But guess what it did not do? It did not solve our cultivation issue. So what Governor Deal, who was the governor back then, said was, hey, you guys have your medical cannabis bill now. It's passed. It's law. I signed it into law, so you're good, right? And I said, Governor Deal, absolutely not. We don't have access that we need, sir. Well, I'm not ready to do the access. This is what his words were to us. And to us as veterans. He's not ready to give us the access that we need. So what he did was encourage us to go break federal law to get medicine that we need to help us manage our issues, to help us reduce our pharmaceutical dependency, to help us come off of, days and weeks and years of opioid use and improve our quality of life. He said, go break federal law, but once you get here, it's okay because we're not going to arrest you here in the state of Georgia. It was it was the most comical thing I've ever heard an elected official say, and I've heard some stupid crap in my life. There's no doubt about it. I think all of you all have too. Some of the things that come out of these elected officials' mouths are really comical. This was one that wasn't comical at all, but I had to laugh because I was like, that's so stupid. It's funny, and it wasn't funny at all. It was ridiculous that they were encouraging us to go to another state to break federal law to get here. And then once we got here, it was okay because the state of Georgia wasn't going to arrest us. And what I told Governor Dill back then in 2015 was, hey, Governor, you've got these men and women who have served. These are veterans that want to do things the right way. They're not going to go break federal law. They're going to break state law. They're going to break federal law right here in their state, but they're darn sure not going to travel to another state and then travel with an illegal product back to here in Georgia. They're going to do things the way that they feel comfortable doing it. And the only thing that's really comfortable for most of them is to utilize the VA and use the pills that they're forcing on us right now because we don't have a choice. I said, look, you've got to help us get the access. This was in 2015. 2016 came around. And by the way, when we first passed that in 2015, PTS, post traumatic stress, was not included in that bill. It only allowed for 4 or 5 issues, and basically you had to be in stage. You have to have 1 foot in the grave to get access to medical cannabis. And then lo and behold, there was no access. There was no cultivation here in Georgia, so you had to go break federal law to get your medicine and then bring it back here into Georgia. It was really frustrating. It was something that, I've seen in my career and seen from across the country. There's a couple of other states that took this approach, but we were the most ridiculous one that didn't allow access for years. And 2015 happened. We got the cannabis bill put together, and there were 800 people in the registry. And those are mainly just patients that were children that had seizures that were getting access to it. They were going and getting oil in Colorado and coming back, and it was being very effective for them. And that's what this bill was originally intended for, was for the children. And look, you all know that that's who we support. That's why we all fight. That's why we sign up to go to war for our country if our country calls on us, for our country, our family, and our friends, right? So we absolutely want to take care of the kids. But it was absolutely wrong that they did not include veterans in this bill to start with. So we fought extremely hard in 2015 going into 16 legislative session, and in 16 we were able to get post-traumatic stress included onto the list of issues and ailments, along with chronic pain. In fact, they called it intractable pain here in Georgia. Meant that you had to have 6 months of continuous therapeutic use of pharmaceuticals with no substantial decrease in pain. So I think every one of us meets that requirement to meet the intractable pain recommendation here in the state of Georgia. So, if you're listening today and you're in the state of Georgia, reach out. Let's get you into the medical cannabis program, and because what we've got now, fast forward to 2018 and what we got done this 2019 legislative session, was we finally got cultivation passed. So 5 years after we started fighting for medical cannabis in the state of Georgia, we finally got it done. Now, I think you all know we're in a Republican-controlled state, and most of the South here is Republican-controlled. They like to do things on a very slow manner, a very methodical manner, a very approached manner, even though sometimes it doesn't make a whole lot of sense for patients or people who are in great need of immediate relief and immediate action, right? So we've got to really focus on bringing this to the forefront, and that's what we did. We fought for you all because that's who matters to us, the patients. That's what Veterans for Cannabis was born out of, the patients and making sure that we had access. So we got to really, keep fighting this good fight. So in 2019, what we got done was the cultivation bill here in Georgia. It was called HB 324, and that gave us access to medical cannabis cultivation in the state of Georgia. And it allows, first and foremost, for us to possess 20 ounces of low THC oil, is what they call it. So the THC concentration level in this product cannot be above 5%. So it's a real frustrating thing for us, right? Is that they limit the amount of THC that's in the product. They don't get it. We've sat down in front of the Medical Cannabis Commission 5 years in a row, 2 or 3 times during the legislative session and during the year, to tell our stories about how, instead of reaching for a bottle of pills when we wake up from a night terror or a bottle of vodka, that reaching for a vaporizer and taking a couple of inhaled puffs and exhaling gives you immediate relief. These elected officials just don't get it. They did not allow for vaping in this HB 324, so they're still making sure that the only way to intake the cannabis oil is sublingually, or they may allow for topicals and for edibles. I don't think they'll allow for brownies or anything like that, but I think they'll allow for lozenges and things like that. And the reason I say I think is because the Medical Cannabis Commission here in Georgia has not been announced yet. So we got this law passed in April of 2019, and it signed into law in June, I think, or July. So it became law then. We were hoping that the governor would appoint his people and have this commission formed by July. Unfortunately, it didn't come to fruition on it. So now we're sitting at, we are now in October, and we're hoping that the commission gets put out there pretty soon. And what that means is the governor has 3 people that he can appoint to the commission. The lieutenant governor has 2, and the Speaker of the House has 2 as well. So that's 7 total on the commission. 7 people will be overseeing the entire state of Georgia's cultivation of medical cannabis program. And they'll be putting together the rules and guidelines around it as well. So that's why I said maybe they'll allow for lozenges and gummies and things like that. Who knows? Hopefully they've heard from the patients in the state of Georgia, because the patients are the only ones that really matter. Look, the people who were against this here were the Sheriff's Association and the religious right. That's who did not want to see medical cannabis come to the forefront in the state of Georgia. Those were the people that we were fighting against. And every time we would sit down in front of the commission, or every time we heard a Sheriff's Association representative speak, or the religious freedom people speak, we would say, hey, look, why aren't you fighting for patients to improve their quality of life? Why are you against this so much? Oh, well, we're not against that. We're against the bill because we don't want this to become recreational. that is the most illegitimate argument to this whole entire process. So if anybody comes to you and says they don't want it to become recreational, tell them, look, we're not talking about